Hey, what's up going on, guys? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. I'm again going to be doing an NBA trades video. Today I'm going to be focusing on Jrue Holiday of the New Orleans Pelicans. I did a trade video for him a couple months back, but I'm doing an updated one because I feel like with where the Pelicans are right now, being a pretty poor team, and I think going forward they're going to be generally a lot more focused on a youth movement. So I think it only makes sense to revisit trade possibilities for Jrue Holiday. So I've come up with 5 scenarios. I'll run them down and why they make sense for each team, and that's going to be about it. So I hope you enjoy the video, and let's get going. The first trade I have is between the Miami Heat and the Pelicans. I have the Heat getting Jrue Holiday and basically just a salary cap fill-in, Darius Miller. And I have the Pelicans getting Goran Dragic, James Johnson, and Duncan Robinson. Um, as for the Pelicans, why would they do this? They get Goran Dragic, who is I think like 15 million, or excuse me, he's 19 million, but his contract is expiring this year. He can kind of be a stopgap for Jrue Holiday. He can average 16 and 5, which is a little bit below what Jrue's averaging, but relatively similar. You'll get 19 million back in free agency for next year. James Johnson is kind of dead weight. He hasn't played much at all this year. He's still an okay player, but his shot has fallen off a bit. But I think if you play him in the right system, he'd be all right. Plus, this team really needs more help down low, and I think he could be that, seeing as he's a power forward. With Zion out, they're kind of lacking a good power forward right now. And then also Duncan Robinson, who's a really promising young player. I think he's averaging like 14 points per game, and he's still like a rookie, I think. If not, he's a second year guy, but I think he might be a rookie. He's averaging something like 14 points and 7 rebounds a game, so they get a really promising young dude who they could play at either forward position, I think. As for the Heat, they get a bona fide second option for Butler and Jrue Holiday, and Darius Miller can sort of just be a stopgap, but the Heat had a lot of players who I'd call like B minuses, C pluses, and I feel like in this trade they kind of trade a couple of those for a player who's like a B plus, so a bit of an upgrade, and they get like a true number 2 for Jimmy Butler. Next trade I have is between the Pelicans and the Raptors. It's a trade of Jrue Holiday to the Raptors for Marc Gasol and a 2020 first round pick. So why would the Pelicans do this trade? They are definitely lacking a big man in the post. Without Zion, they don't have much of a down low presence, and they don't really have much of a starting center either. They've been kind of bouncing between Jackson Hayes, who's at this point still a pretty rough around the edges rookie, and then also Derek Favors, who is okay, but he's undersized and he's slow and doesn't have much of a 3-point shot. And Marc Gasol basically can do anything Favors can, but just better. He's a better defender, a better shooter, a better low post scorer. His contract is expiring, so the Pelicans, after the end of the season, would get $25 million in cap space cleared, which is a lot sooner than when Jrue's contract gets up. So they get a lot of cap space back. They'd get a player who can do a decent job of maybe scoring 15 points and 10 rebounds a night. And then they also get a sweetener of a first round pick in this upcoming draft as well. Then as for the Raptors, they get a guy who can help fill in the void that Kawhi is still left. After this trade, their lineup would look something probably like Lowry, Jrue Holiday, probably then Norman Powell, Pascal, and Serge Ibaka, with a bench of like Van Fleet and Anunoby. And I mean, I think that Jrue Holiday is a pretty good wing defender. He's a slight upgrade over Gasol. This team gets a bit smaller getting Jrue Holiday for Gasol, but I think he can be a nice punch of like 18 points per game for the team and can kind of be a good second option to Pascal, which I feel like they're kind of lacking right now because Lowry isn't really cut out to be scoring 18 points in the NBA anymore, honestly. Next, I have a trade between the Mavericks and the Pelicans. I have the Mavericks getting Jrue Holiday and Nicolo Melli, and I have the Pelicans getting Tim Hardaway Jr. and Dwight Powell. So this may seem like undervalue for Jrue Holiday, but I think it's actually quite fair. You're getting back Dwight Powell, who's like a starting center power forward, or as I just said, he's a starting caliber power forward or center. He's on a really reasonable 4-year contract for 10 mil a year, so that's pretty good. Can get you like 12 points, 10 rebounds a game sort of guy. I think he would be a nice guy to play next to Zion. They're both really athletic, and I think he wouldn't really get in Zion's way too much. Um, as for Tim Hardaway, a nice wing guy who can be like a good sixth man. You could have a starting lineup of something like, just off the top of my head, when Zion gets back healthy, your starting lineup could be like Lonzo. You could actually start Tim Hardaway or JJ Redick, whichever you want. You could have like Lonzo, JJ, Brandon Ingram, Zion, and Dwight Powell with like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Jason, or excuse me, I can't think of his first name actually right now, but Josh Hart, that's his first name, coming off the bench, and you'd have a pretty solid squad still. But you just would get a bit younger. I think Tim Hardaway Jr. is like 26 to Jrue Holiday is like 30, and he's also on a cheaper contract for less years as well. As far as the Mavericks, I think that Jrue Holiday provides a more reliable option than Tim Hardaway Jr. He is the best player in this trade. Nicolo Melli's kind of a throw-in, but you never know what he could turn into. I really just put him here to even out the contracts, and I think he would just kind of be a bench role player. But Jrue Holiday would be like a legit number 2. I feel like Porzingis has kind of been rough around the edges coming back, so I think Jrue Holiday would be a better option for them. And you could have a pretty good lineup of, let's say, something like Jrue Holiday, Doncic, Porzingis, Seth Curry could be in that starting lineup too. And then you could have maybe Nicolo Melli or Boban Marjanovic or Dorian Finney-Smith kind of filling in that 5th open spot. So I think Jrue Holiday basically just gives them a better defender and more consistent option than Tim Hardaway Jr. would at this point. These last two are interesting and maybe are the most controversial. Actually, this next one isn't very controversial, but the last one maybe. The second and last one I have is Jrue Holiday straight up for Nikola Vucevic of the Magic. I think at this point the Pelicans could really use a solid center next to Zion, and as I said earlier, between Jackson Hayes and Derek Favors, I don't really think they have that. I think at this point Jackson Hayes is just super raw and unreliable with given big minutes in the NBA, and I think Derek Favors is essentially the next Al Jefferson, just kind of a dinosaur of what really worked about 15 years ago, and his game doesn't really have much place in the NBA today. And in short, Vucevic is everything that Derek Favors is, but he is a much better offensive player. He can post up a lot better. He has a lot more post moves. He can shoot three-pointers very well, which Favors can't do. He basically does everything Favors does, but better. Offensively, defensively, they're kind of comparable, but offensively, he's definitely superior. So I think the Pelicans could really use that down low, and plus the Pelicans have a plethora of guards, so they're not really missing a ton with Jrue Holiday leaving. In their backcourt, they still have Josh Hart, JJ Redick, Lonzo, so they still have plenty of guards back there, along with Brandon Ingram playing some point forward. So they'd be fine from like ball handling and play creation perspective. The Magic could really use a guard. They have been using like a combination of DJ Augustine and Markelle Fultz for this year and last year, and that's just not going to cut it, I don't think. This also frees up the Magic to start Mo Bamba. Finally, he's been kind of waiting in the wings, and they drafted him really high for him to have done basically nothing last year. So I think it does two things. It clears up a loaded front court for the Magic, and it also gives them the reliable point guard option that they've been pretty desperate for the past season plus. My final trade is Jrue Holiday back to Philly in exchange for Al Horford and a 2020 first round pick from OKC. So the reason why I'd have this trade for the Pelicans is very similar to the last couple I've been talking about. They really need a reliant scoring option. Al Horford can facilitate on offense. He can shoot on offense. He can basically be whatever you need him to be on offense. But the spacing is big because of Zion. And then also on defense, he's a very good defender. And he can be a really good option for them at center on defense. And then also a first round pick just to sweeten the deal because he is an older fella. And then for the 76ers, I think Jrue Holiday could really be what they need. And they would be getting a bit smaller, but I think like Jrue Holiday can kind of compensate for some of what they lost in Jimmy Butler. Starting lineup after this trade would probably look like um, Joel, Harris, Ben Simmons, Richardson, and Jrue Holiday, but the positions would be shifted a little bit. You'd probably have Ben Simmons still playing point guard on offense, but on defense he'd be guarding like a small forward or power forward. So he would be a point forward, and Jrue's actually gotten a lot more used to playing off ball the past couple of years in New Orleans, so I don't think that'd be a big issue. He could also be your point guard when Ben Simmons comes off the court. So for Philly, it's really just saying, okay, we're getting faster and we're getting a better scoring punch, but still maintaining some good defense. And for New Orleans, it's again getting that better defensive low post presence along with somebody who can space it pretty well next to Zion. Let me know what you guys think of these 5 trades. That's all I got for today. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.